Joining us now, Executive Director of Hindu Action, Utsav Chakrabarti. Utsav, what is happening right now in Kashmir?
Well, Matt, as you may have seen in the news, in the last week or so, there has been a lot of activity in Kashmir, and it was started by the attack by radical Islamist terrorists belonging to the group called Lashkar-e-Toiba, which is now fronting as a new group called the Resistance Front, but it's actually same as Lashkar-e-Toiba. They killed 26 Hindus by asking them to recite verses from the Quran, and when they could not recite, they were murdered. And that has led to a serious escalation of tensions between India and Pakistan. And as you may have seen in the news, there are some serious movements happening. But this is a long trend of violence, often driven by Pakistan's geopolitical needs, that leads to radical Islamists targeting people in India, especially in Kashmir, but not limited to it.
The Pakistani government has denied any connection to or involvement with that attack. Do you believe them?
We don't, because usually it takes about 8 to 10 years for them to admit to it. They had originally denied they had any connections with September 11 attackers. Then they had denied that they were any connection to Osama bin Laden, who was eventually found 2 miles from their military academy. We have a record of the last 30 years of Pakistan denying everything that happens to be true later on in the world. And they didn't say they supported the Taliban, which they eventually did. So you name it, whether it's attacks in Europe, whether it's attacks in America, there is always a footprint that eventually leads to Pakistan. But in this particular case, the group that took the credit for the attack, if I can put it that way, belongs to Pakistan. Their actors are trained in Pakistan, very close to their capital, Islamabad.
There are concerns that an Indian attack may be imminent in Kashmir. If that were to happen, how would people think about the risk of escalation within India?
Well, I'm sure that there is cyber rattling from both sides, and I'm sure that there are people in India who are seriously contemplating attacking in a manner that would create deterrence. So in the past 15 years, that has worked. So there were 3 attacks in the last 8 years that Pakistan carried out, big terror attacks, and each of them were responded to with an escalation that was localized, and that led to about 3-4 years of lack of further attacks. In the past, before that, there would be an attack every 2 months from the radical Islamists. And when India did not respond, they would just continue. So I believe there would be some sort of a response from India. What it would be, where it would be, and when it would be, and how localized it will be is yet to be seen.
But it sounds like you're saying India needs to attack to reset deterrence. Is that your position?
I believe so, because that seems to work better than not responding. And what has, as we have seen in the West, especially in America and in Israel, that if you do not respond to radical Islamist attacks, it just emboldens them and gives them a new line that they are willing to cross. So deterrence works. It always has worked in the past, and I think it will continue to work. It just has to be measured and escalatory enough so as to deter Pakistan from doing anything crazy.
It sounds like you're saying this is going to get worse before it gets better, that from your perspective, at least, there has to be more violence to reset deterrence. But I mean, we're talking about 2 nuclear powers. India and Pakistan have nuclear weapons. Are you sure that this type of traditional kinetic conflict in the Kashmir region won't spill over into a nuclear exchange?
I believe that it will not, because in the last 30 years, both the nations, at least India in the last 50 years, has had nuclear weapons since 1978. And Pakistan publicly since 1990s has had nuclear weapons. So there have been regional conflicts between the two that never escalated to the international border. The Mumbai terror attacks, in which more than 130 people were killed, including 7 Americans, did not lead to an escalation that led to a nuclear attack. So I think there will be no nuclear attack. And I think most nations around the world that have nuclear weapons have figured out that that level of escalation is not acceptable to anybody. But again, at the end of the day, wherever we are, nothing can be 100% ruled out. But I think there will be enough saner minds around the world to figure out that such a thing will not happen. But it will be localized, I'm sure, and it will be escalatory, I'm sure.
Well, yeah, the hope is that it ultimately has a de-escalatory function if that indeed is where it goes. Now, I do want to take a moment to compare the political situation right now in India and Pakistan. In India, you have Modi with total control of the government, the country, very popular, seems to be executing his agenda. And then in Pakistan, you've got like Imran Khan in jail and a lot more political strife. How does that disparity play into the interactions between the two countries?
Well, one thing for sure is that there are enough elements in the Pakistani military that have an interest in ensuring that Imran Khan or a proper democracy doesn't return to Pakistan. And as we often joke in Washington, D.C., most countries have an army. In the case of Pakistan, it's the Pakistani army that has a country. So they will probably do things that will make them relevant or keep them relevant in the politics of the country and not allow Imran Khan's revival in any manner. At the same time, there are interests in China and Pakistan both who would not want, and this is very important because this attack happened on the day Vice President Vance was in India, which is very, very interesting. So I'm sure there are elements both in China and Pakistan who believe that a better relationship, a strategic alliance between India and United States, especially on the supply chain issue, will be very detrimental to China's interest, will also be by extension detrimental to Pakistan's interest because it's dependent on the Belt and Road Initiative for its own economy. So there are lots of actors in play here.
Well, that's very interesting what you've just said. And I want to dig into that because are you suggesting that there could be linkage, that China could be encouraging Pakistan to be more malign and to be more belligerent with India as President Trump's trade policies bring India closer to the United States? Is that, if I understood that position?
That would be my thesis on it, because think about it this way. If unhindered, India would be a bigger player in the Indian Ocean. It would be a more active choke point to China in the Indian Ocean exit points. And if India is forced into a situation where it has to deal with Islamists within the country and has to deal with Pakistan in Kashmir and around Kashmir, then they are channelizing India's response into a small valley of outcomes. And that is where I believe there are bigger minds in play that want to bring India into. And I think they want to put America also into this place where more and more American investors feel like that supply chain that could be safe between India and the US may not be that safe. So there are lots of actors at play, and I think this has larger geopolitical implications.
Utsav Chakrabarti, thank you so much for coming on the program and sharing your insights.
My pleasure.